Okay, so I want to talk about David Harper, who is a comic book reviewer. His comic book website is called Sketched, where he does in-depth articles and breaks down the different comics he's interested in the week, as well as things that are coming up. But David's real achievement is the podcast Off Panel,
Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics.
where he interviews comic creators, people who run comic book stores, comic book distributors. He covers everything in the industry beyond just the creative aspect. In fact, it's most related to something like WTF with Mark Maron, as Maron took apart comedy, the comedians, the writing of material, the industry, all these things that he covered in WTF that sort of like gave a national consciousness to how comedy works. That's what David Harper is doing for comic books. I grew up with comic books. I was a huge fan from 11 to 14 years old. I read superhero comics and I love the art. I love the writing. I love the bold characters. Over time, as I became a high schooler, I slowly started to move away from comics, and then I sort of banished them to like nerd stuff or teenage stuff, something I thought was specific to myself. But as I've started listening to David Harper's podcast Off Panel, this seems to be a common situation for a lot of kids.
I was a comic reader who grew up on superhero comics, very common story. And then I discovered a little thing called Preacher. And I was like, I didn't know comics could be like that.
And people do come back around and realize, oh, there's a whole well of creativity here that's not being explored in the mainstream. There's so many writers and so many creators and so many different kinds of comics and stories available to people who are passionate about creativity and entertainment. David Harper has really gone out of its way to normalize a lot of these feelings people have about comics and accept readers where they are.
But there was something singular and special about that comic that totally like rewired my brain about the potential of the medium.
Because of this, it creates a forum where you can come and listen. And even if you're not interested in a certain comic book they're talking about or a certain creator, it's still very engaging and very evocative of the creative process.
Each book was sort of drafted out multiple times because my inclination as a writer is to lean a little bit more on atmosphere and a little less on narrative.
The other thing is, much like Mark Maron of WTF, he asks such in-depth, interesting questions. He understands the art form and has an inquisitive sense of why something works or doesn't work and wants to explore that with the creator.
How do you feel that long-lasting relationship nature of yours changes your ability to make comics together?
Oh, that's interesting.
He asks hard questions.
Even when I don't 100% love one of your projects, I appreciate how big your swings are.
Informed questions.
Did that start with wanting to work with Rachel and figuring out something for the two of you, or did it start with the idea?
And sometimes just comic book nerd fan questions.
Which turtle are you?
Ultimately, it's about how did this thing come to be? And what was this person's take on it?
I mean, I'm only thinking out loud now because it's a great question. This is another thing I love about you, David. You ask really good questions.
This is what David Harper is really great at, much like Mark Maron. He's such a fan and a participant in this world that he's opening the doors for all of us who are on the outside to learn more about it, to get excited about it, and then more importantly, to see the people behind the work as human beings.
I want more readers, not because I want more money, because I want these stories to be consumed. I want them to be seen, and I'm making them for people to consume and see them, to be entertained.
So now that David has made it his full-time job, I do want to make this video a call out to anyone who's listening who's slightly intrigued about what I'm talking about to give David's podcast a follow or to sign up for the Patreon or sketch.com. Follow him on Instagram, Threads, subscribe to the Sketched YouTube channel, find David Harper and help him keep this going.
You're the best, David. I hope you continue to take care of yourself, and I hope everyone out there supports your stuff. There's so little smart writing about comics.